My mother actually demanded that I call off my wedding, all because of my half-sister's feelings. So, I made a choice. I uninvited them, and the way I handled the situation left everyone completely stunned. I'm Emily, and at 30, I felt like my life was finally falling into place. Last March, Ryan, who's 31 and the most incredible man I know, asked me to marry him. We'd been together for 6 years, and he's my best friend, my rock, and just the most supportive person imaginable. The moment he knelt down, it felt like everything I'd ever hoped for was right there. But the second I shared our happy news, my mother and my half-sister, Cassie, who's 24, seemed determined to make my engagement and wedding all about them. My mother married my stepdad, Tom, when I was just 5 years old. Cassie is their daughter, making her my half-sister. Although we grew up under the same roof, we were never really sisters in the true sense of the word. We were more like acquaintances who tolerated each other. Cassie has always had this strange need to compete with me. It started in childhood. She'd get upset if I got a better grade or if a relative complimented me more. As we grew older, the things we competed over just became bigger. I earned a scholarship and went to college. Cassie didn't go at all. I found real love with Ryan, while she jumped from one fleeting, chaotic relationship to another. And now that I was engaged, she was acting like my happiness was some personal attack against her. Ryan proposed during a low-key weekend at home last March, and we decided to get married in January. We envisioned a small, intimate wedding, a cozy gathering with around 70 guests. It felt perfect. Us. I was so excited to start planning, and I naively assumed my family would be too. Couldn't have been more wrong. When I called my mom to share the news, her first response wasn't excitement or congratulations. It was, "Oh, Cassie's not going to like this." First, I laughed, thinking she was joking, but she was dead serious. Apparently, my engagement was going to somehow wound Cassie's feelings. Why? Because she was single and trying to find herself. Whatever that meant. I tried to dismiss it as just an odd comment, but a few weeks later, Cassie announced that she was marrying some guy she'd been seeing for only 3 months. Now, I try really hard not to judge other people's choices, but this felt wrong. Cassie has always been impulsive, but marrying someone after only 3 months, a guy none of us even knew, just didn't feel right to me. Still, I kept my opinions to myself. It was her life, her decision, and none of my business. Cut to July, and Cassie's whirlwind marriage imploded as quickly as it began. Her husband, Jake, cheated on her with her best friend, of all people. 2 months after the wedding, she filed for divorce. The entire situation was messy and heartbreaking, and I truly felt sorry for her. But whenever I tried to offer my support, I was met with a cold shoulder. It felt like she was angry at me, and I couldn't understand why. And then it dawned on me. She didn't want my support. She wanted to blame me. From what I could gather, Cassie believed that my engagement had somehow triggered her rushed marriage, as if my happiness was a challenge she needed to overcome. And when her marriage fell apart, she decided it was easier to resent me than to take responsibility for her own choices. By the time fall arrived, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Cassie and I hadn't spoken much since her divorce, and Mom was acting strange. Every time I brought up anything about wedding planning, she would clam up or change the subject. Felt like she was avoiding the topic, so I didn't push it. I assumed she just didn't want to talk about weddings because of Cassie's situation. I was so blind. Honestly, nothing can prepare you for the sheer absurdity of being made to feel guilty about your own wedding. The idea of wedding planning always felt daunting, picturing logistical nightmares and budget battles. I never imagined my own family would turn it into a bizarre kind of contest. Yet here we are. It's mid-November now, and the wedding invitations for Ryan and I have finally been mailed out. Relief washed over me, a real sense that everything was finally falling into place. That lasted all of 48 hours before the phone rang. It was my mom. I remember thinking it was unusual. She generally prefers texting me, maybe once a month. But I answered, assuming she just wanted to chat about the wedding details. I should have known better. The conversation started predictably enough. She inquired about me, asked after Ryan, and then casually slipped in, "So, You're really going through with the wedding? At first, I thought she was just confirming the date or something. Yeah, of course. Everything's set. The venue's booked, the caterers lined up, the flowers are ordered, and most of it's already paid for. Then came the sigh. Not just any sigh, but a loud, dramatic expulsion of air that practically screamed, "You are about to commit a terrible mistake." "Well," she said, dragging out the word as if preparing to impart some profound revelation. "I've been thinking about Cassie, and I honestly think you should reconsider." I paused, completely bewildered. Reconsider what, exactly? She hesitated, as if gathering her strength for a major performance. "I just don't think it's a good time for a wedding, Emily. Cassie is still so heartbroken from the divorce. Having a large celebration like this so soon after everything she's been through feels incredibly insensitive." I honestly couldn't believe my ears. "Wait, are you saying I should cancel my wedding for Cassie?" "Well, yes," she responded, as if it were the most reasonable request in the world. "She's been through so much, and seeing you get married so soon after her divorce is going to be incredibly painful for her." I was stunned into silence. I honestly didn't know what to say. "Mom, we've been planning this wedding for almost a year. The venue's booked, the deposits are paid. How can you even suggest that I just cancel it?" She didn't skip a beat. "You could always do something small, a church ceremony, maybe with just immediate family. That way you still get married, but it's not such a big production. You wouldn't be flaunting it." "Flaunting it?" I repeated, incredulous. "Mom, this isn't about flaunting anything. This is about celebrating my relationship with Ryan. We've been together for 6 years. This is our day." She sighed again, heavier this time. "I just think if you really loved your sister, you'd do this for her. She needs time to heal, and a big wedding is only going to make things worse." By this point, I was fuming, but I tried to maintain a semblance of calm. "Mom, I understand that Cassie is going through a difficult time, but this has nothing to do with her. Ryan and I have been planning this for so long. It's not fair to ask us to change everything because of her choices. That didn't go down well." "Her choices, Emily? She didn't choose to have her husband cheat on her. She didn't choose to have her life fall apart." "Yeah, but she did choose to marry a guy she barely knew after 3 months. That was the wrong thing to say." Mom completely lost it, accusing me of being cruel and selfish, of having no understanding of what Cassie had been through. She even threw in the classic line, "I thought I raised you better than this." At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. "Mom, I'm not canceling my wedding. End of discussion." I hung up, shaking with anger. I immediately called Ryan and told him everything. He was just as bewildered as I was. Who asks their own daughter to cancel her wedding because of someone else's divorce? I could only agree. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, Mom doubled down on her campaign to guilt me into canceling or scaling down the wedding. She'd call me every few days, each time presenting a different variation on the same argument. "Cassie is heartbroken, you're being insensitive. A small wedding would mean so much to the family." At one point, she even tried to get Ryan on her side. She called him directly, saying, "You're such a thoughtful person, Ryan. I know you'll understand why this is important for Cassie." Luckily, he shut that down immediately, telling her that we were sticking with our original plans. Much to my relief. Started subtly, almost like a drip torture. Cassie began texting, and those messages felt like tiny, carefully aimed barbs. "So lucky everything just falls into place for some people. And isn't January a bit soon for something like that?" Then she dropped the bomb. "January just feels like you're doing it to hurt me." The sheer gall of it stunned me. Initially, I tried the high road, silence. But that just fueled the fire. The texts morphed into calls, then into drawn-out, guilt-inducing voicemails about how devastating weddings were for her, how my insensitivity was supposedly hindering her healing. What made it truly unbearable was the way my mother and Cassie seemed to amplify each other's drama. Mom would call, her voice heavy with concern, and say, "Cassie cried all night about the wedding." The next day, Cassie would text, "Mom's really upset by how you're handling this." It was emotionally draining. I felt like I was reaching my limit. How could they so readily try to hijack my happiness? That's when it clicked. This wasn't about Cassie's divorce or her feelings, however valid they were. This was about control. They wanted me to diminish myself to soothe their insecurities, and I was done letting them dictate my joy. By December, things had escalated beyond passive aggression. Cassie had moved on from subtle digs and was now actively trying to tarnish my reputation. It felt like a constant barrage of attacks. My cousin Megan, bless her observant heart, became my informant. She told me Cassie had been calling relatives, painting me as some sort of heartless monster flaunting my wedding to deliberately inflict pain. She even claimed I had chosen January specifically to rub her face in my happiness post-divorce. The absurdity of it left me speechless. My engagement was set long before her short-lived marriage, let alone the divorce. How could I have predicted her life would unravel while I was addressing save the dates? But logic held no sway against her victim narrative. The stories she was spinning grew increasingly dramatic. Megan recounted Cassie saying things like, "Emily always thinks she's superior. She's just flaunting her perfect life because she knows I'm struggling. And the worst part? Some of our family members were actually buying into it." Of course, my mother was her biggest advocate. She started calling me almost daily, pleading with me to reconsider, to cancel or drastically scale back the wedding. "Cassie's still so fragile," she'd say, her voice laced with concern. "She cried all night after seeing your wedding invitations. Can't you just do something small?" I held my ground every single time, but the emotional toll was heavy. The real explosion happened at Christmas dinner at my aunt's house. Ryan and I had accepted the invitation hoping for a little peace, but of course, Cassie and Mom were also there, a massive red flag in hindsight. The atmosphere was thick with tension from the moment we arrived. Cassie barely acknowledged me, but every mention of the wedding was met with pointed sighs and eye rolls. At one point, while I was chatting with my aunt about flower arrangements, Cassie loudly muttered, "Must be nice to throw away so much money on a party when some people are just trying to survive." I ignored it, but the intention was clear. The conversation shifted, and I started to relax, a little, until Cassie suddenly burst into tears. Right there in the living room. Full-blown sobbing, shaking her head, muttering about how cruel everyone was. The room went silent. My aunt rushed to comfort her, asking what was wrong. That's when Cassie began her performance. "It's just so hard," she sobbed. "I've been through so much this year, and now I have to sit here and listen to Emily talk about her perfect wedding like nothing else matters. She knows how much pain I'm in, but she doesn't care." And my mother, without hesitation, chimed in, rubbing Cassie's back like she was some wronged saint. "She's right, Emily. You need to be more considerate. You have no idea how hard this has been for her." That was it. I snapped. The pressure had been building for weeks, a tight knot in my stomach that I could no longer ignore. "This wedding," I started, trying to keep my voice level, "has nothing to do with Cassie's situation. Ryan and I have been planning this for a year. If she's upset, that's not my fault, and frankly, maybe she should look at her own choices instead of projecting onto me." The silence in the room was suffocating. I saw a flicker of something akin to shame on my aunt's face, quickly replaced with discomfort. Cassie's eyes, previously brimming with tears, hardened with fury. "How dare I?" she spat. "I have no idea what it's like to have my life fall apart. I've had it easy with my scholarship, my perfect relationship, everything handed to me. I've never had to struggle." That stung. I stood up, my hands trembling, not just with anger, but with hurt. "Maybe," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I don't know what it's like to have my life fall apart, but maybe that's because I think before I leap. I don't jump into things just to keep up. If she focused on her own healing instead of blaming others, maybe she wouldn't be in this mess." Ryan squeezed my hand then, a silent cue. "We're leaving," he said, his voice calm and firm. I didn't argue. On the drive home, the conversation replayed endlessly in my mind. Had I been too harsh? Was I insensitive? The more I replayed it, though, the more justified I felt. Cassie had been subtly, and not so subtly undermining my happiness for weeks. I wasn't going to let her turn my wedding into a spotlight for her drama. What truly bothered me, though, was Mom's immediate defense of Cassie. There wasn't even a token attempt to see my perspective, to acknowledge the stress I was under. Felt like she had already picked a side, and I was on the losing team. The next day, a text from Mom arrived. "You owe your sister an apology for what you said last night. She's been through so much, and you were cruel." I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. No, I was done apologizing for things I wasn't responsible for. It was clear Cassie wasn't going to let up, and Mom wasn't going to stop enabling her. I didn't know what their next move would be, but I knew I needed to protect myself, to brace for impact. Hey everyone, thanks so much for all the comments and support on my last post. Your advice really did help me think through things. After the family dinner debacle, it hit me. I had to establish some serious boundaries. Cassie and Mom weren't just being difficult. They were actively trying to sabotage my wedding, my happiness. Ignoring it obviously wasn't working, and every defense I made seemed to add fuel to the fire. The only solution, as much as it pained me, was to exclude them entirely from the wedding. 2 days after that disastrous dinner, I sat down with Ryan, the words catching in my throat. I think I need to uninvite them," I finally managed to say, feeling a lump forming. "They're just going to make everything worse if they're there." Ryan nodded without hesitation. "I've been thinking the same thing. It sucks, it really does. But this is your day, our day, and you deserve to enjoy it without constantly worrying about what they're going to do next." Hearing his support lifted some of the weight, but the idea of actually cutting off my own mother and sister from my wedding felt almost impossible. It wasn't just about them. It was about the potential fallout with the rest of the family. Still, I couldn't let their negativity ruin everything Ryan and I had poured our hearts into. So I drafted an email. I kept it concise, factual, and as unemotional as possible. I explained that their actions over the past few months, the rumors, the guilt trips, the constant drama, had made it clear that they weren't supportive of our wedding. I told them their behavior had caused me considerable stress, and for my own peace of mind, I had decided to uninvite them. I clicked send, and immediately felt a strange mix of relief and guilt wash over me. The responses started flooding in within hours. Mom was first, and her reply was a masterpiece of manipulation. "I was cold-hearted," she said, "tearing the family apart." The email dripped with melodramatic phrases. "I never thought my own daughter would betray me like this," and "You've chosen a man over your own blood." She even threw in a line about how my deceased father would be so disappointed in me. Classic guilt trip tactics. I closed the email without responding. Then came Cassie. Her response was predictable. A torrent of anger and self-pity. She accused me of being jealous of what, exactly, I still couldn't fathom. She even claimed I was punishing her for being honest, whatever that meant. The email ended with this dramatic pronouncement. "You'll regret this when you realize you've destroyed this family." I didn't even bother to respond. But the drama didn't end there. In the days that followed, my phone blew up with calls and texts from other family members, mostly the ones Mom and Cassie had already turned against me. My uncle called, lecturing me about being immature and needing to let it go for the sake of family harmony. A cousin I barely knew left a voicemail expressing disbelief that I could do something like this to my own mother. At first, I felt completely overwhelmed, like I was drowning in their negativity. But then something amazing happened. The people who genuinely mattered started showing up. My Aunt Laura, my dad's sister, called to tell me she was proud of me for finally standing up for myself. "You've put up with their nonsense for far too long," she said. "It's about time you drew a line." My cousin Megan, who had been my inside source on Cassie's antics, sent a long text saying, "Don't let them get to you. The people who really know you are on your side." Even my godmother, normally a woman of few words and even fewer emotions, called to say I was doing the right thing. "Your wedding should be about love and happiness, not about bitterness and drama," she stated firmly. Their support was like a soothing balm to my soul. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I wasn't completely alone in this mess. But Mom and Cassie, predictably, weren't going to back down quietly. About a week after my email, I got another call from Megan. "You are not going to believe this," she said, her voice a mixture of amusement and exasperation. "Cassie's telling everyone you uninvited her because you feel threatened by her." I actually laughed out loud. "Threatened by what, exactly?" I asked. "Apparently, she's been saying you're worried Ryan has feelings for her," Megan said. "She's claiming he's been flirting with her, and you found out, so you're trying to get rid of her to save face." It was so utterly ridiculous. I honestly didn't know how to respond. We both knew there wasn't a single grain of truth in any of it. Still, it was infuriating that she was trying to drag Ryan into her twisted narrative. "That's just pathetic," I said. "No one's going to believe that." "Honestly, most people don't," Megan admitted. "But you know how she is. She's going to keep spinning the story until she finds someone gullible enough to believe her." I decided right then and there not to waste any more energy worrying about Cassie's delusions. I needed to focus on protecting my own peace and ensuring my wedding day would actually be enjoyable. To that end, Ryan and I sat down and meticulously reviewed the guest list and finalized all the last-minute details. We contacted the venue to make sure they were prepared to handle any potential drama Cassie or Mom might try to stir up. We even hired a couple of security guards to keep things under control, something I never imagined I'd have to do for my own wedding. But here we were. Throughout it all, Ryan was my constant source of strength. He kept reminding me that this was our day, and we didn't owe anyone an explanation for protecting our happiness. As New Year's approached, I finally felt like I was starting to regain control of the situation. Cassie and Mom could spin their tales all they wanted, but they weren't going to ruin this for me. I know it hasn't been long since my last update, but what happened is something I absolutely had to share immediately. If you thought Cassie's antics couldn't possibly get any worse, just brace yourself, because this one takes the cake. By the time January rolled around, I felt like I'd witnessed every shade of her jealousy, pettiness, and manipulative behavior, but what she tried to pull next left me completely speechless and, frankly, a little disgusted. It all began with a strange text Ryan received one evening. We were sitting on the couch, finally unwinding after a long, stressful day of finalizing wedding plans when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and I immediately saw his face change from relaxed to tense. "What is it?" I asked, already bracing myself for another wave of drama. "It's Cassie," he said, showing me the message. The text read, "Hey Ryan, I really need someone to talk to. I know you probably think I'm a terrible person right now, but I'm really struggling, and I feel like you're the only one who understands. Can we meet up?" My initial reaction was just bewilderment. On the surface, it seemed innocent enough, but knowing Cassie and knowing how relentlessly she'd been trying to create problems, I had an immediate and overwhelming sense of foreboding. Ryan clearly felt it too because he didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned to me and said, "I don't like this. Something feels really off about this." "Because it is off," I said. "She's never even liked you. Why would she suddenly want to confide in you about her feelings?" We both agreed that the best course of action was to ignore her completely, but the messages kept coming. The texts from Cassie started trickling in, then escalated into a full-blown downpour of neediness. I swear, each one was more desperate than the last. It was all about how lonely she was, how she had absolutely no one else to lean on, and how incredibly grateful she was for Ryan's kindness during what she called such a difficult time. The thing is, Ryan barely knew Cassie. He'd always been polite, sure, but they'd never had any real conversations. It struck me as so calculated and manipulative. I was immediately creeped out, and Ryan was too, to be honest. We agreed to hold our tongues and see what her angle was before responding. It didn't take long. Then came the message that practically set me on fire. It was so blatant, so disrespectful. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately," she wrote to Ryan. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help it. I feel like we have a connection that Emily doesn't understand. I don't know what to do with these feelings." I was absolutely livid. It wasn't just her audacity, but the sheer nerve of trying to pull this when she knew our wedding was days away. Thankfully, Ryan immediately showed me the message. "How do you want to handle this?" he asked, his face etched with concern. I took a deep breath to steady myself. "Let's not give her the satisfaction of a reaction," I said. "Block her number, but screenshot everything first." He did exactly that, bless his heart. I wanted to keep those screenshots as evidence, just in case she tried to spin some crazy narrative later on. The next morning, I felt like I couldn't let this go without saying anything. I wasn't going to give Cassie the time of day with a direct response. That would just feed her drama-seeking soul. Instead, I wrote an email to my mom and a few other family members I trusted. I kept it factual and to the point, attaching the screenshots and explaining that this was the reason I was right to uninvite Cassie from the wedding. "This behavior is toxic and manipulative," I wrote, laying it all out. "I've done everything I can to keep the peace, but this crosses a line, and I hope now you understand why I excluded her." The responses were varied. My mom, predictably, jumped to Cassie's defense. She said I was misinterpreting things, blowing it out of proportion. She even insinuated that Ryan might have somehow misinterpreted the messages. "I can't believe you'd accuse your own sister of something so horrible," she wrote. "Cassie's just going through a tough time, and you're making it all about you." I swear, my eyes almost rolled right out of my head. It was frustrating, but honestly not surprising. Luckily, other family members were far more supportive. Megan, my cousin who had been in my corner from the start, called me as soon as she read the email. "Are you serious?" she exclaimed. "I knew Cassie was a piece of work, but this is next-level insanity. Good for you for cutting her off." My dad's sister, Aunt Laura, was equally outraged. "You're absolutely right to keep her away from the wedding," she told me. "She's proven time and again that she doesn't respect you, and this just confirms it." Their support meant the world, but it didn't completely erase the hurt. Cassie's actions felt like a personal attack, not just on me, but on our relationship. It felt so humiliating to have someone try to undermine everything Ryan and I had built together, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was it jealousy? Spite? Some desperate need for attention? Probably a little bit of everything, if I'm honest. Whatever her twisted reasons, I knew I couldn't let her win. With only a few days left before the wedding, I made myself a promise. I would not let Cassie or my mom ruin this for me. I also decided to double down on security. I contacted the venue, explained the situation, and explicitly stated that Cassie and my mom were uninvited. I even hired an extra security guard, just in case they decided to show up anyway. It felt a bit extreme, but after everything, I wasn't taking any chances. Now, I feel more prepared than ever to face whatever nonsense they might try to throw my way. Cassie's attempts to stir up trouble might have shaken me, but they didn't break me. If anything, they only made me more determined to protect my peace and celebrate my love with Ryan. Hey again. If everything goes according to plan, this is the last chapter in my family drama saga. I truly believed I had considered every possible scenario leading up to the wedding, but nothing can fully prepare you for your own family attempting to sabotage the happiest day of your life. The morning of the wedding began beautifully enough. The venue looked absolutely magical, adorned with all the flowers and decorations we had carefully chosen over the past year. The weather that day was a gift, truly perfect for the outdoor ceremony I'd envisioned. My bridesmaids were angels, keeping my spirits high and my nerves at bay with their constant chatter and silly jokes as we got ready. Ryan and I had planned a first look, a private moment before facing everyone, so when I was finally in my dress, I practically floated to the garden to meet him. Seeing him standing there, a mirror image of my own nervous excitement, a wave of calm washed over me. All the tension I'd been holding on to just seemed to dissolve. This, I thought, was it. This was what mattered, or so I desperately wanted to believe. About half an hour before the ceremony, back in the bridal suite for a last-minute lipstick check, Amanda, my maid of honor, burst in looking completely rattled. My stomach lurched. "You won't believe this," she said, her voice tight. "Mom and Cassie are here." My heart plummeted. What? How did that even happen? I thought we had security. They're trying to get in, Amanda explained. Security stopped them at the gate, but they're making a scene. Of course they are, I muttered, closing my eyes for a moment. I took a shaky breath, trying to regain some composure. What are they saying? Amanda hesitated, a clear sign that whatever was happening was bad. Mom's crying, saying she just wants to see her daughter get married. Cassie's, well, she's screaming about how I'm a terrible person and how I don't deserve any of this. The anger flared, a familiar burn in my chest. It wasn't enough that they'd made the wedding planning process a living hell. They had to try and ruin the actual day itself. What do you want me to do? Amanda asked, her eyes filled with concern. Nothing, I said, trying to sound firm. Let security handle it. If I go out there, it's just going to give them exactly what they want. Amanda nodded, understanding, and went to check back in with security. I sank into a chair, trying to focus, to breathe. I could faintly hear their voices in the distance, my mother's sobs, Cassie's shrill accusations, and it took every ounce of self-control not to storm out there and give them a piece of my mind. A few minutes later, Amanda returned with an update. They're refusing to leave. The venue manager offered to call the police, but we're worried that would only escalate things. I groaned inwardly. This was precisely why I'd made the difficult decision to uninvite them in the first place. Should I tell Ryan? Amanda asked gently. I shook my head. No, he doesn't need the stress right now. Just make sure they don't get anywhere near the ceremony. Thankfully, security was doing their job. They managed to keep Mom and Cassie confined to the parking lot, and eventually the venue staff arranged for a ride to take them away, but not before Cassie's voice, amplified by the open air, carried all the way to the courtyard. You'll regret this, Emily. You'll regret cutting out your own family. Once they were gone, I took another long, deep breath and willed myself to let it go. They were out of sight, and I refused to let them poison my joy. The ceremony itself was everything I had ever dreamed of, and more. Standing there with Ryan, surrounded by our closest friends and family, the supportive ones, at least, I felt an overwhelming wave of love and gratitude. This was what truly mattered. Not the drama, not the bitterness, just this moment, with the people who genuinely cared about us. Later, during the cocktail hour, snippets of the scene Mom and Cassie had created started to filter through the crowd. Apparently, they had been shouting accusations at the security guards, claiming I had been brainwashed by Ryan and that the entire family would never forgive me for excluding them. A few guests had even overheard them from the parking lot, which mortified me, but thankfully most people simply dismissed it with a roll of their eyes. My dad's sister, Aunt Laura, approached me during dinner and squeezed my hand. I'm so proud of you for standing your ground, she said, her voice full of conviction. They showed their true colors today, and everyone sees it now. That sentiment seemed to echo throughout the night. Cousins, friends, even some of my mother's old acquaintances sought me out to tell me they were on my side. It felt like a collective awakening. People were finally acknowledging the toxic influence Mom and Cassie had been, and they weren't tolerating it anymore. The rest of the evening unfolded in a blur of laughter, dancing, and unadulterated joy. Ryan and I shared our first dance under the twinkling fairy lights. My maid of honor delivered a toast that was both hilarious and incredibly touching. And my dad's best friend, who has always been like an uncle to me, had everyone in stitches with a story about the time he caught Ryan trying to sneak away from a family barbecue with a plate piled high with ribs. By the time the night came to an end, I felt lighter than I had in months. Mom and Cassie hadn't won. They hadn't stolen my happiness. And in that moment, that was all that mattered. Their attempts to sabotage our wedding day only underscored the immense love and support Ryan and I received from the people who truly matter. That night, back in our hotel room, my phone buzzed incessantly, displaying a string of missed calls and texts from Mom. I couldn't bring myself to read them. I was finished allowing her or Cassie to occupy any space in my life. The decision to completely cut them out was agonizing, one of the hardest I've ever made. But standing at the altar with Ryan, surrounded by genuine affection, I knew with absolute certainty it was the right one. Thank you, again, for lending an ear throughout this whole ordeal. Your support truly meant a lot. I'll keep you updated on any post-wedding fallout, though fingers crossed there won't be any. I'm so over it. LOL. Reddit. You will never guess what unfolded about a week after the dose. I got a call from my cousin Megan, always the first with the family scoop. You won't believe what just happened, she exclaimed, her tone more excited than sympathetic. I sighed internally. What now? Cassie and your mother had a monumental fight, Megan revealed. I mean, an epic showdown. She paused for dramatic effect. And here's the kicker. Your mom kicked her out of the house. My jaw practically hit the floor. Wait, seriously? What triggered that? Megan, of course, was eager to fill in all the juicy details. Apparently, after the wedding, Cassie had been moping around Mom's house, consumed by bitterness over her failed attempt to wreck my happiness. According to Megan, Cassie was assigning blame left and right. Me, Ryan, the security team, even a distant cousin who, apparently, didn't try hard enough to intervene. The real eruption occurred when Cassie turned her wrath on Mom. She accused Mom of not doing enough to prevent the wedding. She apparently launched into a tirade, screaming that it was Mom's fault I'd gone through with it, that Mom should have been more forceful in persuading me to call it off. Mom, who had always indulged Cassie regardless of her ridiculous behavior, finally reached the end of her rope. Megan said Mom screamed back, telling Cassie she was exhausted by the endless drama and that Cassie was an adult who needed to take responsibility for her own choices. Cassie didn't take kindly to that. She supposedly launched into a full-blown tantrum, accusing Mom of failing her as a parent and choosing me over her. It escalated so intensely that Mom finally ordered her to pack her bags and leave. When Megan recounted all of this, I couldn't help but laugh, not because I found it humorous, but because of the sheer, absurd irony of it all. After months of Mom defending Cassie and siding with her, it all backfired spectacularly. She actually kicked her out? I asked, still trying to absorb the information. Yup, Megan confirmed. Cassie's crashing with a friend for the time being, but I wouldn't be surprised if she comes crawling back in a few weeks. The whole situation felt like karma playing out in real time. Ultimately, their toxicity imploded, and they turned on each other. I wish I could say I felt sorry for either of them, but truthfully, I don't. After everything they put me through, it felt like a kind of poetic justice. As for me, I'm officially done with both of them. I've blocked their numbers, muted them on all social media platforms, and made it abundantly clear to the rest of the family that I have zero interest in hearing about their latest escapades. Ryan and I are wholeheartedly committed to starting this new chapter of our lives together.